Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Franke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live every Thursday. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, just positive overall.
Totally positive.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's like Olympics coverage right now, nonstop, and that's always fun. So I'm having a good week.
I feel like with the Olympics coverage, whenever I feel like I'm just about to grasp a sport, it's over. You know, it's just
like grasp the rules.
Yeah, it's like,
not
okay,
like you could do it.
Yeah, I think I have handball figured. Let's go to coverage of 3-on-3 basketball.
Yeah.
And then let's go to ping pong. And I'm like, I guess I'll just watch the spectacle.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had fun with judo earlier, and I'm like, someone fell on the ground, and the match was over, and I'm like, is that
right?
That's
like,
judo?
What's happening?
Okay, that was a toss. Jeff, how you doing this week? Do you get into the Olympic coverage at all?
So this is going to sound really negative. I have nothing against the Olympics
no,
in any way. I just don't get into it. Like I tried watching the 3-on-3 basketball, and it just didn't resonate.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's like it's daytime sports. You know?
Yeah, I can't get into it. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate what they're representing and doing. I just, from a viewer's perspective, I'm just not engaged, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of that, they do a better job. I can get involved. They do a lot of really good storytelling around the athletes.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, watching some of the sports, it's just like, wow. Huh.
They
did that. But I mean, some of it's pretty exciting, like sand volleyball. I'm a sucker for,
The venue they have for that is pretty awesome. Like in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Is that really cool. There? Or is that just like AI in the background? Or is it like really in front?
I thought it was real. If it's AI, it fooled me.
Yeah.
So
that is an incredible view.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsors, BigCommerce and Data Extreme. Hi, I'm David Manti, and with me today is Chris Harrington. We're talking about the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers. Chris, does anyone ever want to call you about the price of an O-ring?
They never want to. Unfortunately, often they have to because, many of our manufacturing friends out there do not have an e-commerce presence yet to make it easy for customers to go and make those repeat purchases or simply get the price and availability for that O-ring and get it ordered so that they can finish the job that they're working on over the weekend, right? So, yeah, our customers don't want relationships with us for the price of an O-ring. Let's have the great conversations with our customers on the important tasks and leave the tasks that can make our customers more productive and our own employees more productive. Let's leave that for our online tools.
Let's leave it for the tools, and let's talk about it a little bit more in great detail. July 30th, please join us for the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers. Register below. We'll see you there. Hey, we're back. This week's episode is once again brought to you by BigCommerce and Data Extreme. Manufacturers are quickly discovering that e-commerce is no longer a capability that is just nice to have. Rather, it has become mission critical for those wanting to stay competitive on a global level. So, we assembled a crack team of e-commerce experts to provide guidance on real-world solutions. So, register now to view the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers on demand. Register now. Quick pause. Thank you. You'll enjoy it. All right, our first story this week. Tesla quietly pushes back humanoid robot timeline. During a quarterly earnings report, Tesla announced a 44% dip in quarterly profits. That's despite a 2% increase in revenue. While the focus has been on Tesla's potentially shifting role in the EV market, the company also quietly pushed back the timeline on Optimus, the humanoid robot the company has been working on for years. Optimus was supposed to be in Tesla factories by the end of this year and delivered to clients starting next year. According to Electric, Optimus won't go into production for internal use until next year, and that's, quote, low production to boot. High production won't happen until 2026. The year-long delay isn't unusual for Tesla, or any company these days, really, but CEO Elon Musk remains hopeful, recently posting on X that the bots will be, quote, genuinely useful. That is when they finally walk off the production line. Anna, will we see Optimus working on a Tesla factory floor without falling over by the end of 2025?
That is a big question. I don't know. It's hard to take any Elon Musk generated timeline seriously at this point. And that's not something that bothers me a whole lot. It might if I were the SEC or a shareholder, because I think sometimes it seems like these timelines are either not practical or worse, they're just pulled completely out of thin air.
Yeah.
But I realize that there are a lot of variables involved. And sometimes that means things get delayed. You just think that he would know by now that that happens. Like, but yeah, it's been an interesting program to follow. Our audience has been very interested in tracking Optimus and everything that Tesla is doing as they develop the robots, how it went from being a person in a robot suit initially to now a prototype that kind of functions, albeit awkwardly.
Yeah.
I've been, I think, pretty clear about my position on humanoids in the past. I think everyone is playing around with this concept. However, I'm not sure that it's practical. The idea being here that it's easier to incorporate automation that has been built in a form factor that accommodates what existing factories look like. That may be so, but these bots are still very expensive. You could do a lot of factory floor renovating to actually accommodate the automation as it exists now.
Okay.
That's proven. Before you get any kind of ROI on robots that are humanoid and come with a 6-figure price tag, need to be charged, need maintenance, all of that. They creep out your human workers. We know that for a fact. So I'm not exactly like bullish on this technology at this point in time. I also think this revised timeline may be a bit ambitious as well.
Oh, yeah.
Tesla seems to think that it can prove these things out internally, which that may be so, but I do think that that would be a tough case study to trust if I were a buyer. These will need to be out in the market elsewhere, in my opinion, and for a long time being studied so other businesses can understand how they would be incorporated. You can't really take Elon Musk's word for it. Like, these are functioning perfectly in Tesla factories. Like, we've had no problems. When he tried to pretend that a person in a robot suit was the robot initially. So I don't know. I just like manufacturers and distributors, they take their time with even like the most basic of technologies, really trying to vet out how's it going to work? Do I want to integrate it? How long is the implementation going to take? What are the hiccups going to be? Is it worth it? So I just don't really see this taking off anywhere near market wide in 2026. I think there's a lot more road ahead of test.
Yeah. When he says, I mean, it's gotten to the point when Musk says something like genuinely useful that I think, oh, so there's maybe like 2 or 3 niche applications.
Yeah, I think it could like hold a crate of things. Like to do
it could
this
maybe
and turn,
pick something up,
set it down.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like a forklift can already do.
Yeah.
But I'm not like really feeling like it has all these applications that are amazing and unique and
It's a tiny little baby forklift with legs.
Yeah.
I mean, and for me, when it comes to seeing these on the factory floor by the end of next year, I feel like it's a simple no. Like, it'll be interesting to see. Jeff, what do you think that Tesla factory floor looks like next year? Are there humanoid robots working on it really? Or is there like a little test cell in a corner where they're really trying hard to get that box off the pallet and on the shelf?
Well, I would say if their revenues or their profits continue to go the route that it's going, there's definitely going to be fewer human beings on those plant floors, whether they're replaced by robots or not. And I think that's sort of the core of what I took away from this. You've got a business that is losing money because you're selling more stuff at a lower price and it's not working for you. It's not bringing in the capital that you need to expand your business. When it comes to robots in particular, these humanoid bots, this isn't the first time things have been pushed back by Musk. When he initially launched,
That's putting it nicely.
Yeah.
I mean, when he initially brought out Optimus in 21, he thought he was going to have it up and running the next year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of next year.
Yeah. It's a couple years later and we're still waiting. And where I go with this, number one is it's kind of like when you walk into some of those family restaurants and you look at the menu and it's like 5 pages long. It's like, hey, you want some enchiladas? We got that. You want some scrambled eggs and French toast? We got that too. Whatever you want, it's here.
Yeah.
None of it's great, but
Yeah.
it's all here.
Yeah.
And that feels like where he's going when he starts talking about Tesla being more than just an EV company. You're doing all this stuff, and maybe he can do it. He is one of the most brilliant individuals on the planet, but he's not doing any of it great right now. Tesla's got a lot of issues to work with. They've got recalls to deal with. They've got OSHA violations to deal with. They have got employees suing them over hostile work environments. They've got the SEC after them. Hey, man, focus on building some cars before we start doing with humanoid robots. And the other place I go with that then is, even if he comes out with this next year, let's say he does hit that timeline for his factories, why in the world would you buy a robot from Tesla? If you're somebody else, GM's working on humanoid robots, Toyota's working on humanoid robots, Boston Dynamics is a leader in that field. We've actually seen Apollo or Aptronic at trade shows doing this type of work.
Yeah.
And there's like 20 other companies also doing this with just an industrial focus.
Yeah.
Guess what, Elon? I'm going to spend my 30 grand with them
Yeah.
as opposed to you who's just doing a bunch of different really cool stuff.
Yeah. No, and they, with companies that like to, let's say, back it up before they market it,
Right.
rather than come out with bluster. But I mean, I don't see, that's another thing too, is like with Tesla Automotive, there is that, there are the, like, for lack of a better term, like the Cybertruck bros, right? There are the Tesla early adopters. There is like a market out there who will be early adopters. Like, but I don't, the industrial sector, you're not gonna get a factory to bring a Optimus onto the factory floor for the cool factor, right?
Right.
You're not gonna get like, I mean, people don't bring new equipment onto the factory floor until it's proven, or until you can at least give them a pretty decent case study.
Well, and I think one of the things too here, when you look at Elon Musk and sort of the reputation he's got, when you look at buying a robot, you're also looking for a ton of support there. How do I implement this? How do I program it? How does it fit into my workflow? Is he really going to be the guy who establishes that part of that business? Maybe, but he doesn't have the reputation that would lead you to believe that, unlike a lot of these other folks I was talking about.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, and they're going to be so customized to applications that it'll be interesting to see how, if they continue to do the same where they just push these over-the-air updates, is that going to change things? Is that going to change how Optimus is programmed for each unique application? I also thought, so looking at this report from Teslarati, I think it's even further down the line than we think, because Tesla has been ramping up job postings for this Optimus program. And in March, Tesla was looking for, a field testing or a bunch of field testing experts for the humanoid robot as part of more than 60 job listings for this project. And it's just like, okay, if you're currently looking for 60 more people on this project, how is it ever realistic that you're as close as you actually think you are? The position, I thought it was actually kind of cool because in March, they were looking for a technical program manager that would help drive the deployment of these trial applications. I mean, it sounds like a cool gig. You're working with design engineering, infrastructure, manufacturing, and operations teams on this on these pilot applications in various manufacturing environments. I mean, it sounds like a really cool job. But if you're still looking for the person to run the pilot application in March 24, I just don't think it's realistic that it's actually working in Tesla in 2025. But who knows? Maybe he nailed this one. All right. Our next most popular story. Manufacturing defect caused wind turbine blade to break apart. On July 13th, parts of a wind turbine blade that is longer than a football field started breaking apart and falling into the ocean. The turbine was part of the Vineyard Wind Project near Nantucket Island. No one was hurt, and crews on land and sea have been collecting truckloads of debris, grabbing fiberglass fragments as they wash ashore. This week, GE Vernova, the manufacturer, said the blade fell apart because of a manufacturing problem. According to the company, the blade fell apart due to insufficient bonding at a Canadian factory and not because of a design flaw. The company has made 150 blades at this factory, and all of them now need to be inspected. CEO Scott Strazik said the inspections will be thorough, and he wouldn't give a timeline on when they will be done. Operations at Vineyard Winds have been suspended for the foreseeable future, and GE Vernova's CEO said, quote, "We're not going to talk about the timeline today. We have work to do, but I have a high degree of confidence that we can do this." Anna, do you have confidence that GE Vernova can do this and quickly?
I don't know, but I do think confidence is kind of at the crux of this. And by that, I mean public confidence in alternative energies can be kind of like a wavering sentiment for some folks. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about wind and where we're at now. So according to the American Clean Power Association, as of today, America's wind power capacity totals 151 gigawatts, making it the fourth largest source of electricity generation capacity in the country. This is enough wind power, they say, to serve the equivalent of 46 million American homes.
Wow.
Wind helps avoid 346 million metric tons of CO2 emissions annually. That's what they say, equivalent to 76 million cars worth of emissions. The industry employs, as of now, some 126,000 Americans. The DOE says it has the potential to support 600,000 jobs by 2050.
Well, yeah, you can use a lot of maintenance workers if they're falling apart in the ocean.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not my point, but
Wow, David. Man.
My bad. Sorry.
put that one in your pocket for now.
Sorry, it's in there.
Yeah. But, meanwhile, so obviously this is an industry that is developing. It's developing quickly. It has, I think, a ton of room for growth here. And a lot, people are very optimistic about what kind of jobs it can bring to the American economy, right? These green jobs that we've been talking about. But meanwhile, so Stanford University published a report just last month showing that public support for renewable energy, and this includes wind and solar, has dipped over the past decade. They say that 70% of Americans support wind energy compared to 84% in 2013. So just 10 years ago, that has dropped 14 points. I'd wager to guess personally that this may be because climate policy has slowly become more of a partisan issue, or it's been positioned that way, which is unfortunate. But when you look at the potential with wind, I think a very public and glaring defect put on display like this has ramifications not just for this company, but also for the very viability of an industry that has huge potential for growth, but also I think kind of relies on public support of these programs that are often government funded. And right now that support is eroding a bit. So you'd hate to see some politician or reporter grab this headline and try to use it as evidence that this is not a technology that's worthy of our support, because I believe that it is. I'd also like to add that Stanford's data also showed declining support for both fossil fuels and for coal. So we want energy. We just don't want it produced in any way that exists.
Yeah. We want all of our energy, by no means necessary.
Yes, please don't do it in any way, but we do need it, so figure it out.
Yeah. Just a crazy lifestyle change. And it's crazy that, do you really think that the wind energy industry can be undone because of a faulty gluing machine?
Yeah, I know, but it can. People right now, you see people pick up on these talking points because of something they see on the news, and then it becomes what about the birds? What about the whales? And what about the gas that it takes to transport a nacelle and a turbine? What about the climate cost of that? And then people start to focus on these other issues, when in fact the net gain of wind energy is actually, as I just laid out with this data, pretty monumental. So I don't know. It does muddy the water a bit when it comes to that issue, I think.
Well, and Jeff, it does when you think of a blade the size of a football field, 109 yards long, crumbling into the ocean, I mean, that is a catastrophic accident.
Yeah.
But I think that, hopefully they did trace it to this root cause. And I think it's a pretty simple answer, a pretty simple solution, to hopefully prevent it from going forward.
Well, what was the comments from the CEO there? Were highly confident.
Highly confident.
Highly confident.
I think we can.
Highly confident.
I think they're on top of it. We think we know what we might be doing.
Yeah,
So,
no. He has a high degree of confidence that we can do this. Ooh.
Well, it's interesting because, building on what Anna was talking about from a public acceptance perspective, okay, I think we've embraced what wind power can be and the potential for it. When you look at the business side of it, though, the timing is really bad here. GE Vernova just in April finally completed their breakaway from GE to sort of become their own separate entity.
Mm-hmm.
And during that same time now, when you're talking about 150 wind turbines, these are $150,000 a piece. This is a big piece of capital expense that is just sitting there and just being inspected. So not great timing for them in terms of trying to build confidence in their product, especially being kind of a new company, still being attached to GE, but trying to operate independently anyway. And then you also look at a lot of the different elements that are holding up wind power. Putting aside sort of the public acceptance, whether you're for or against it or worried about birds and whales and everything else, the World Economic Forum put out a study where there's like $30 billion in wind projects that are being held up right now due to inflationary costs, supply chain struggles, regulatory issues. So my point is, wind's got other stuff that they need to deal with right now. They don't need what is arguably probably the second or third largest supplier in the world of this very specific product, facing quality issues.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on here, and the sooner that GE Vernova can wrap this up with a high degree of confidence and start putting these things back out there, the better for all involved.
Well, get your bonding right.
Yeah.
Just like but you're right. It was a huge year too, because GE Vernova's revenue rose only 1% year over year. It was still $8.2 billion in revenue, but the company had posted a profit of $1.28 billion. So an incredible year. Last year, that was a $149 million loss.
And they're actually there's a lot of competitive pressure there. Siemens has really been catching up to them in recent years too, and pushing them for that probably second or third spot. So there's competitive elements as well.
I mean, do you want to throw out a little blocking and tackling in here when it just comes to fastening and assembly? Just like, gotta get the glue right.
Yeah, let's make sure it holds.
When fully operational, Vineyard Wind is expected to generate 806 megawatts of electricity. That's enough to power more than 400,000 homes and businesses in Massachusetts. And it's going to consist of 62 wind turbines. I didn't know how many did you catch how many are operational currently?
How many
I think
wind
it's like
turbines?
15.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Vineyard Wind. But I mean, just the opportunity off of Nantucket is critical for GE Vernova. So find the issue, fix it, and hopefully while they're inspecting them all, they don't all have glue problems.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, 3-row Ram pickup may be more than just a concept. Dodge unveiled the all-electric Ram 1500 Revolution concept at CES last year. It had a 500-mile range, a configurable cabin, and a third row. The production version, when it rolled out, was missing some of these exciting features, most notably that third row. However, Dodge has quietly filed a patent described as, quote, a jump seat configured to be attached to and detached from a rear wall of the passenger cabin. Chief designer for interiors, Ryan Nagode, got the idea from parents who were lugging around collapsible stadium seats at youth sporting events. It made him feel like modern jump seats in a pickup weren't that far-fetched of an idea. It might be easier to realize the concept because when you remove internal combustion components like the engine and transmission, you free up a lot of space for more cargo and more passengers. So by removing the transmission tunnel, you can add a pass-through cargo area that could also fit these jump seats. According to Dodge, 15% of pickup buyers want extra seating, and minivan demand is in decline. So Anna, is the time right for the pickup truck van.
The pickup truck van.
Yeah, just pure automotive sex appeal right there.
Yeah. I kind of actually like this idea. Dodge talked about the percentage of pickup buyers that are interested in having that extra space. They said it's 15%, but there are 3 million pickup buyers. So that's actually not a small number of people that find the appeal here. To me, it's kind of a compelling idea. They back it up with the data. And I also think this segment is being almost overtaken by full-size SUVs because people, as you said, aren't buying minivans. But they need that third row and the cargo space for like a family vehicle.
Yeah.
So, you have that need there just generally in the automotive market. But secondly, I'd argue that the biggest gaps in EVs right now are currently in that larger family vehicle segment. There are no all-electric minivans on the market in the U.S. right now. There are some coming. But when you look at the large three-row SUVs that are available, a lot of them are quite expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So you have your pick of smaller cars and smaller SUVs, but there is a need, I think, for a spacious family vehicle that also comes with good range. And Ram has that standard 350-mile range right now, which is actually pretty good and comparable to an ICE SUV. But they also have 500 available.
Yeah.
500 is great.
Yeah.
It's got the towing capacity for your campers and your boats. And then that third row is kind of all that's missing, I think, to make that, kind of covers all your bases if you have an extra friend to take to the movies or whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
You can build that out or you don't have to, But to me, what was really fun about this story is just thinking about how design can become so much more exciting because of the removal of those ICE components. It really is changing the way some of these vehicles are built, what they're capable of. There's a lot more capabilities. Like you said, you remove that transmission tunnel and you've got all this extra space for cargo. I know that there's been all this talk about what do you do with the frunk? Like you don't have an engine in the front. You can put this, you have this little storage and different automakers are doing different things there. They're experimenting with cabin design and space because it's just a totally different, it's almost different clay to work with essentially. And to be honest, we talk about design and sometimes how designers set out to solve problems that maybe are a bit unnecessary in vehicles these days. I think we see it a lot in automotive, that they're a bit over-engineered, and everyone's kind of got this effort in place to out-gadget one another. This seems like a feature that's maybe worth the dev time to me. Not so many haptic controls that people are getting into car accidents or the giant touch screens that are distracting people unnecessarily. That's the kind of stuff that maybe we don't need that stuff, but this to me seems like a good idea that actually solves some problems for some people in the market. So I would like to see where it goes. I don't know that we'll see it soon, although Carlos Tavares, CEO of Stellantis, says that they have plans to iteratively roll out all of these features that were on the CES prototype.
Well, and it can be, it opens up a whole new landscape for design. And it can be cool, but it can't be too weird. Because then if it's too weird, then they shelve it. People, are just whoa, too much of a change. What was it, the Origin last week? Where it's just too different. No, it's a pass for us. Well, and I also like the idea of, and I know that we talk about it a lot with, design engineering, where that moment of inspiration or that aha moment comes from. And you just see the chief designer of interiors at Ram sitting at a kid's soccer game and all of a sudden a couple of people pull up those terribly uncomfortable seats that I in no way think improve the experience whatsoever and just kind of make it more difficult because you have to bring them to and from the game, whatever. And him just sitting there being you know what?
Wait a
I think
second.
I think I could put that in a truck. And he's just all of a sudden this guy bails from his kid's soccer game, Jeff, and you think that he's just being an irresponsible father, but really he's got to get to the computer and start drawing this up in CAD.
Sure.
That's how it happened. Pretty sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty sure.
I guess I'm not as big a fan of this.
But why? What is just because you think it's unnecessary?
No, here's the thing. So growing up, I've never been a huge car guy, okay? But my dad was, and I always hung around with friends who were. So I would say from the time I was 10 I was very aware of cars and vehicles and the way they were designed. And in that span of time, I would say, let's go from 1985 to about 2010. The vehicle maker said, this is what you want. We're going to tell you exactly what you want, and here's the design you get. Then when they realized they were overproducing cars, they weren't selling much, and they were getting into a lot of financial trouble, they shifted gears a bit, right? And they started going more towards, what does the consumer actually want? We saw fewer sedans. We saw more SUVs, more trucks. And that's basically where we've emanated towards right now. Makes sense. But I think this is sort of taking that to another level of trying to be so highly customized for the customer that you're basically just going to cannibalize any other vehicle options. It's like, we've got a truck and you can trick that truck out however you want to, but it's going to be that truck with this many seats and you can put whatever you want in there, but that's it. And I feel like that's the road that this could take us down here.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is going to be a positive move for car companies if they want to continue to basically say, you know what else can we do with an SUV? What else can we do with a truck? We're not going to have any other options. And I just, that's what I worry about, because at some point you also need to help direct the customer towards what can be most beneficial for their needs. Putting jump seats in a pickup truck, I also don't think adds a ton of value.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only certain individuals who are going to be able to take advantage of those seats. So I don't know. I guess I don't see it. I'm not as optimistic about this really taking off or being that much of a value add to it.
No, so for me, it's an incredible value add, but I agree with you where it's like not a needle mover in terms of like, I need to go out and get this because of the jump seats. But for me, it comes to functionality, right? And when we were out in the market recently looking for a 3-road car, Anna's right. We had like no options when it came to like an EV van, just no options. Then the options we were looking for a 3-row SUV, the one in particular we were looking at, it was like at a stop sale, so they wouldn't even let us test drive one. And, we wound up at a minivan, and so, hey, we're going to get that minivan life. But when like talking to the sales guy, he was just like, I get you a truck. And I was just thinking like, man, if I had that other option, if I had that truck with those jump seat options, because right now I only have 2 kids.
But wouldn't you have also rather had the SUV with the 3rd row, or you wanted other options is my point. And that's what this is killing.
Well, I thought this would offer another
3-row SUVs don't have very good cargo, like very little storage because of that 3rd row. A lot of them can't tow. Like, I just think that this combines the good things about an SUV with the good things about a truck. And I think that's going to have some appeal for some buyers, not every buyer.
Yeah.
But it also might make this pickup stand out in a crowded market of pickups if it's the only one that can do that. Like, just my opinion.
No, and in the spot that I am right now, where I thought I was maybe 10 to 15 years away from being able to like justify getting a pickup for our next vehicle, this is one that I could get, and use for all the reasons I want a pickup truck, but also buy it as a family vehicle.
So who sits on the jump seats?
The friends.
Yeah. So other small children?
The older friends. But I mean, yeah.
But my point there's a limit as to who can even use this.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if you have really small kids, this isn't for you right away. But I mean, like, I feel like my kids are getting into that age group where this would be a suitable alternative. Just because I know some of our friends and their vans, I mean, I know that the kids just kind of jump into the side and I'm like, they all got belts up. They all got belts on? Yep. Okay. And so I think that this would be for everyone kind of like maybe 6 years old and older. Like I would feel comfortable on short run.
6 to what? 6 years to what?
Oh, as old as long as they can get in there.
Same people who buy minivans, though. I mean, you don't need like the minivan. You're not like your kids graduate from high school and you still have that minivan. I mean, it's definitely, there's a time for it, but people buy vehicles during that time for their lifestyle. I don't know. I don't think it's a stretch. I mean, it doesn't seem to appeal to you, Jeff.
Not even a little.
But that, I think it will appeal to people, certain segments of this market.
What if, what about the like jump seats on the tailgate or on the back of the car where like you can open the trunk, flip them out back, and then you have those seats available to just like tailgate? You good there?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Much more.
They're not moving, so I guess that's a little different.
I mean, so you're saying like functionally, like because they're by nature uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think you're limited to a certain body type and probably age group that these are actually functional for.
Oh, true. Yeah. Grandma and grandpa aren't getting into those jump seats.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're going into the kids and the kids are going into the jump seats. But yeah, it's,
Could take a few extra kids to the movies, though.
well, it's crazy. I mean, just being in that parts of life right now where it's like, oh, okay, I could use a little extra room in the car because there's so many kids that want to just pile into the vehicle. And it's like, sorry, it's a Yaris.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, we could take maybe one more if you sit sideways. Maybe. All right.
Dog stays.
The dog stays, definitely. Oh my God, especially now in the summer, the hair. All right. Our next most popular story. Stellantis may kill money-losing vehicle brands. In the company's latest earnings report, Stellantis reported a net profit plunge of 48%. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares, never one to shy away from uncomfortable statements, says the company may have some tough decisions ahead as he looks to right the ship. This includes reducing production rates due to high inventory and even killing some underperforming brands. According to Reuters, Tavares is open to axing underperforming brands, saying, quote, if they don't make money, we'll shut them down. Which is odd, because in 2021, when he became CEO, he committed to investing in the company's 14 brands for at least a decade. And a decade is 10 years, and we are 3 years away from that 2021 mark. Now, on to the guessing game. Which ones are going to get the chop? Motor One says the Lancia and Alfa Romeo, and maybe even Chrysler. Reuters suggests some could be sold instead of killed, like luxury car brand Maserati, but that brand has had an operating loss of 82 million euros. And some will remain still too big to fail, like Jeep, Ram, and Fiat. Jeff, we really haven't seen a lot of brands die since GM killed off Pontiac and Saturn. Do you think Stellantis will give some of these brands the chop? Do some have value that they could be sold or spun off?
I wouldn't be surprised if they are no longer a part of Stellantis in the near future. But I think it's actually more likely that instead of just killing the brands, that they would be sold. I really do, because I do think there's a lot of not only just equity, but also identity, and potentially it could be just a better fit in some other car companies. Starting with like Alfa Romeo and Maserati. I mean, these are some pretty iconic sports luxury brand type names. It wouldn't shock me to see somebody like Toyota, Volvo, maybe take a flyer on these and see what they could do. I think when you look at brands like Chrysler and Dodge, Chrysler, that's the one I could see maybe not
Chrysler's
sticking
dead.
around.
Yeah.
Some would argue Chrysler's already dead.
Yeah, that one. But like Dodge, I could definitely see. I mean, the value of that brand probably isn't crazy expensive if you wanted to make that acquisition. I think this would be a time to do it. And if you look at a company like maybe Rivian that needs a car outfit that also needs facilities, employees, things of that nature, and those are sort of part of the deal, I could see some of these things making sense in terms of current market players wanting to get into and maybe diversify what they can currently offer and not having to, sorry, pardon the pun, like reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have an operating framework that they could bring in these types of vehicles with a well-known brand to help establish a new product line.
Yeah.
So I could see some of those taking off. It is unfortunate that he's backtracking on his commitment of 10 years. I mean, there's a lot more to it we know in the automotive world when you just want to kill a brand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be the UAW is going to be involved if you start looking at some of those Chrysler or Dodge facility
Ram.
what am I trying to say? Plants, points of operation, things like that. And I think the other ones are pretty safe. I don't think Jeep's going anywhere.
No,
I don't think Fiat's going anywhere, obviously. So I think it's really, to me, it was those four that really stood out.
So Rivian's going to acquire the Lancia to bring it to America? The EV?
No, but
Lancia?
I mean, couldn't you see Rivian, wanting to reinvent the Charger?
Oh, 100%. Like, so for me, I was thinking... It's a hard no. But for me,
I'm not going to put a third row in it. That's for sure.
Jump seats, Jeff.
Well, I was thinking like an Alfa Romeo with a jump seat has a spot in America's marketplace. Well, I thought some of these more premium brands like Maserati or Alfa Romeo, like would maybe be better off as a standalone company rather than in this huge automotive mass production operation that's, maybe they just don't fit the mold.
I think that's tough nowadays. I mean, unless you're a Koenigsegg, type supercar type maker, I think it's really tough because you've got all these other automakers taking advantage of doing everything at scale, buying at scale, production at scale, that they can sort of borrow from another operating entity to streamline and take advantage of cost benefits, things like that. So not out of the frame of possibilities by any means. There's enough enthusiasts out there who would definitely get behind, especially like Alfa Romeo or in Europe.
Yeah.
Could definitely see that happening. Maserati's definitely got its enthusiasts as well. So it's not beyond the thought because, again, those brands are really strong.
So, Anna, 14 brands now. How many brands by the end of next year?
It will be interesting to see, that's for sure. And I think between Dodge and Chrysler, just my opinion, I don't think they would sell Dodge. I think that they would dump Chrysler tomorrow. But they only have one model on the market, and it's a minivan. I don't know what sales are like on that right now, but as we just discussed, not like the hottest market. So I don't know. Anyway,
not the hottest market, but so trying to buy a minivan, like I had to get on a list.
Yeah,
it was like, so they might not be hot everywhere, but man, the market is hot for Siennas.
Was it a Chrysler Town and Country that you were trying to buy? Was there
Pacifica?
I'm sorry, it's called the Pacifica now. Was it a Pacifica list that you were on?
I guess I should have gotten on that list. No, it was a Sienna list. I'm on the exclusive Sienna list.
The exclusive Sienna. I don't know. I think there was a lot of well, duh type reactions to this story, like cutting money-losing brands. Like, what's to think about? Why would a company continue to dump money into money-losing business units? I definitely feel that. Like, I get that. But, I also want to add that when you're Carlos Tavares and you're put in a position where you're asked to achieve the kind of turnaround you've achieved in the past, which he did with PSA, that's why he was put in this position at Stellantis. I think there is a lot of scrutiny applied to these statements, and there should be. I agree with Jeff. I think it was the biggest thing here that to me was regrettable was that Tavares suggested from the beginning that he was going to give these brands all a long runway with which to prove out their viability. They were going to invest in these, basically giving them a fighting chance, a statement that it appears he needs to walk back now. That's the only thing I think I can blame him for here, because he views Stellantis, which was formed, as we know, as a merger in 2021 of several companies. He called it just 3 years back a baby company. He views this as an entirely new entity. Mm-hmm. So making that broad proclamation, I think then was maybe a mistake. I don't know that he should have done that.
Yeah, you need to instill that confidence at the time, though. It's like when Lovie Smith came out and he's like, it doesn't matter what we're going to do as a team, we'll at least beat the Packers. And everyone's just like, oh, it's a reach. But you got to instill that kind of confidence. Like, we're going to stick with everybody.
But he's the guy who makes cuts to make a company survivable. That's what he is known for.
Yeah.
Like to tighten things up and right the ship. And so that's kind of what I think people were expecting when he took on this role. I don't think he has to play to the other side of it, be honest. Mm-hmm. As far as cutting underperforming brands, what else can you do? I mean, people find it unpalatable because they tie memories and nostalgia to these legacy brands, like your grandpa had a Dodge or a Chrysler or whatever. Like, I get that. But you can't run a company and pay people's paychecks on like lingering goodwill from a brand that's just been in the market for a long time, but nobody wants to buy it. The auto industry is in flux right now. We know that. The article points out that cutting brands is uncommon. And that may be generally true, but I do think that this is a transition point for auto. So as we move away from smaller vehicles, as we add EVs and hybrids, like at a really fast pace, I will be surprised if we don't see this type of brand calling more in the next couple of years. Stellantis also announced this week voluntary buyouts for workers. Tavares, as I said, has a history of really unapologetic cost cutting. Don't be surprised to see this progress. I won't be. And then as for the Maserati point, just as an aside, Stellantis has denied that Maserati is for sale. They've responded to that part of these reports to say that no, that is not that is not on the chopping block at this time. But there are brands that are mentioned in this report that I could see going away, and maybe they're sold. But maybe they just snuff them out. I don't know.
But Maserati was called out specifically in that earnings call, which is why everyone was speculating around that brand entirely, right?
Because it was the only brand for which Stellantis carved out, yes, the earnings specifically. Everything else was just lumped in together. Yeah. But, we have sales numbers on everything. It's easy to figure out which brands are not doing it. And, we know that there are some, as Motor Authority and other reports pointed out, are not, really pulling their weight at this time.
I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot more standardization. I think there's going to be a lot more, to Jeff's chagrin, like homogenization of what cars are, especially as Gen Z and likely Gen Alpha behind it are showing a decreasing interest in driving. I think that things are going to get plainer, more standard, less options. I just feel that's the path forward for automotive. Regardless of how you feel about how autonomous driving might be in a generation or two. One thing I was curious about is, so we always talk about Carlos Tavares being blunt and outspoken. And we always talk about Elon Musk being blunt and outspoken. But Anna, how is Carlos Tavares' style different and more accepted than like Elon Musk's, sort of similar style? Is it that Tavares has more of the track record?
I think as a businessman, Tavares strikes me as just being a little bit more disciplined. I've definitely put him on blast before for some of the stuff that he said. I mean, he's really gone out of his way to blame the EV transition for so many problems that Stellantis has. Yeah. I don't think that's been exactly fair. But execs say that kind of stuff on earnings calls. They, pass the buck and they explain it whatever way they think makes sense to them. Yeah. I do think it's a lot less bluster, though. Okay. I don't think they're on the same playing field there. He's not really making promises and then not delivering. That's not the kind of thing that we have seen from Stellantis, really.
Tavares also stays in his wheelhouse. Okay. Yeah. Musk, he's very visible on a number of fronts, shall we say.
Very visible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
in a lot of places where he most definitely is unqualified to be speaking.
Is that why we don't have to end every quote that we share from Tavares with "take it with a grain of salt"?
Pretty much.
Just like, no, he's shown a history of sort of backing up what he says.
Yeah, there's also not a whole lot of hypocrisy involved with that, which we can definitely point to Elon Musk for.
Oh yeah, we're just there. We're sitting right next to that can of worms, and we're about to open it. We're all just like looking at it, and we're like, "Are you?
Let's just kick it. Let's just kick it in the water.
We're gonna kick the can.
Kick it.
Just kick it in the water. Don't even kick the can down the road.
Kick the worms in the water.
Kick it into the water.
Punt
and
it
let
into
them
the water.
Sink and die. Well, all right. All right. Our most popular story this week: Ford F-150 Lightning almost pays for itself through a new grid deal. A handful of Ford F-150 Lightning owners in Maryland will participate in the nation's first vehicle-to-home power plant. Sunrun, a provider of clean energy as a subscription service, is partnering with Baltimore Gas and Electric Company to use a small group of customer-owned bidirectional electric vehicles to deliver power to homes when demand peaks. The hope is to take some load off of the state's power grid. The program will only include 3 customers, and they must own an F-150 Lightning, a Ford Charge Station Pro, and a home integration system. Sorry, the Ford Charge Station Pro and home integration system, that's all one thing. Sunrun will run networking and monitoring on and track how much energy the trucks share from June 1st to September 30th of 2024, between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays. Very specific times here. The money will go back into the customer's pockets. Sunrun thinks it's going to be about $800 for the 4 months during the pilot. The proof of concept program is the first in the U.S. to rely on customer-owned vehicles, but it could lay a foundation for a future where EVs help out with grid resiliency and utility price stability for everyone. Anna, the skepticism is high with this project.
Yeah. I think that there was some overreaction here as to what the program is intending to do. Maybe some oversimplification of what it actually is. Lots of commenters on our site indicated their concerns that this would consistently deplete the vehicle batteries and add charge cycles to the point of unnecessary wear on the battery. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair, but also there are some things to consider, I think, before we jump to that conclusion. One, my understanding of this is that power companies are looking for ways to support the grid in extraordinary circumstances. We're talking about peak demand here, but what I think is unsaid is like power companies have had a lot of issues with rolling blackouts and brownouts and peak demand to the point where there's a disaster and people are down for like days and it's sweltering heat and they're like under the gun to get power back to the grid.
Yeah, it kills the grid.
Yeah. They're not trying to pay you to provide regular power to their customers. That's not a good business model for them. They want to pay you, I think, to occasionally prevent these extraordinary events, maybe. Secondly, these batteries, they're federally mandated to be warrantied for 8 years. Not to mention, most of them are rated for like about 3,000 charge cycles. I charge a full cycle maybe 2 or 3 times a month. Mm-hmm. So that's about 80 years of battery charges, all else aside. I think you could drive a lot more than me and you would still have many cycles to spare after several decades of using this battery. Many people are not coming close to maxing out their battery life. Lastly, these are tests. This is a proof of concept. It's a pilot program. Nobody will do this if it breaks their vehicle.
Three people.
Yeah, it has to work for both parties. And I think it's an intriguing idea. Obviously, it's not in its final phase. Details need to be worked out for what's practical. But for right now, it's about like figuring out if it works and maybe what the best terms of this application might be. I think people are like losing it over this when that's not necessary. It's not like they're just like their idea is we're going to pay you and now the plan is to just like have a bunch of Ford trucks supply the entire grid and then we burn out those trucks in 3 months. Like that is not the plan.
Yeah, that doesn't work for anybody. But I do understand those realistic concerns over the battery's longevity just because at a recent service, they told me I needed a new battery and they're like, don't worry, it's not the $6,000 one. And I'm just like, it better never be that one, which I know that I've shared before. And it's just now knowing the value of that battery, I'm just a little more protective of it. Just like, okay, yeah, you better not burn that out. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this particular project? Again, we're talking about 3 people. I don't even know to call this like a proof of concept, a pilot program. It's still like, this is just the tiniest.
Well, it's a pilot and it's starting with small steps, looking to take bigger ones. And I think that's a positive. So when you put it into a broader light than what it needs to be at, that's okay. Cause you're looking down the road a little bit. Yeah. You still need to value it for what it is in the moment, but it's okay to look a little bit further down the road. The first thing I thought is, man, if we can get to a point where electric vehicles are giving power back to the grid, that really takes away all of these range anxiety concerns, which is one of the biggest obstacles for more EV sales. Yeah. So potentially this is a great marketing tool for EVs. Helps you a little bit on your power bill as well. That's not a bad thing. So yeah, let's see if we can do this. I immediately thought too, when you look at a lot of things when we see hurricanes coming in down south, this is gonna allow those grids down there to potentially swap up a little more power in the time being, so that when we do need to disperse that out for emergency crews or whatever the case may be, there's a little bit extra there. We can keep the hospital generators going. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there is a lot of different ways that we could potentially use this. I think it's very interesting. Also, I think one of the things we didn't touch on here that maybe was worth going into is there's a lot of smart metering technologies out there already. So we're not looking at just grabbing all the power and sucking it out of these trucks as soon as you get home from work.
Just drain them.
Saying during peak hours, if this is another asset at our disposal, we're going to use it. But we can also compensate for that when we get to that, midnight to 4 a.m. time block on Monday through Thursday, which is not peak.
Right.
We can supplement this. We can work a little bit and, rig it so that you're not going to be tapping your battery out all the time. So there's a smart way to do this. And it sort of jumped to a lot of those conclusions like, yeah, you're going to crush the battery. This isn't worth the energy. This isn't worth the dollar amount you're getting paid back. Sort of missing what this is really about here. So I think it's very interesting. It's too early to tell. But if we do get to a point where we can do this, that does quell a lot of concerns. What it also puts more emphasis on is we need to get to the source of power generation and be smarter there. It's great to talk about electric vehicles, but if we're still burning gas and coal, that's the problem. We had the wind turbine story before. We need to get that figured out. So that's how we're generating power and distributing it to all these places.
Well, and not just range anxiety, but I mean, that is quite a sales tool. If just like, listen, not only is range not going to be a problem, but you're going to plug it in at the end of the night, and from 5 to 9, you're going to power your own house. You might power a few others, and you're going to get paid for it. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know how you lay that out on the sales sheet when you're trying to show them ROI. Just like, no. In the event that this happens.
If there is a collective that can figure it out, it's car salesmen.
That's
they
very
will
true.
figure out a way to put it on a piece of paper.
It's very true. Sunrun, this is a company that's a major player in residential solar and battery storage. And this project's impact could be very far-reaching. Vehicle-to-home systems could help support the power grids during peak times like we talked about, but could also help solar integration, getting more people to buy into putting solar panels on their home. And as this person that's constantly on interested but not willing to pull the trigger, it's just another thing where I'm just like, oh, okay, finally. We could finally do it. I also thought it was really cool. They have the first person who's been selected for the project. They did a little spotlight on him. His name is Brian Foreman, and he actually bought his Lightning because he has a house that doesn't have a backup generator, and he lives in an area that still has a lot of exposed power lines. Mm-hmm. That certainly resonated with me, not because of where I live at home, but like our cottage, which is out in the middle of the wilderness by one very exposed wire. And, I've talked about the Lightning being a really interesting purchase for us as well. I mean, we're only up there a handful of times a month, but it would be a real benefit not having an external backup generator. The Foremans as a family, they've been early adopters on green tech. They say they haven't had any issues so far, and they power their home on a set schedule. So I thought it was really cool. They seem to have found the perfect person for this pilot. Yeah. Just like he says their family was the first one to buy a Tesla. They were one of the earlier ones to put solar panels up. I don't know how they found him, but he's just a perfect fit for the project. And the person you are picturing right now, that's him. Mm-hmm. He's just, but I thought it was pretty cool. And I don't know, I'm intrigued and excited by this project just because I don't think this is a long-term solution, but Jeff, when you talk about some of our failings that we have when it comes to the grid, this could be like a real suitable bridge towards when we have improved grid infrastructure.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Kind of bridge that gap. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsors, Big Commerce and Data Extreme. Hi, I'm David Manti, and with me today is Chris Harrington. We're talking about the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers. Chris, does anyone ever want to call you about the price of an O-ring?
They never want to. Unfortunately, often they have to because, many of our manufacturing friends out there do not have an e-commerce presence yet to make it easy for customers to go and make those repeat purchases or simply get the price and availability for that O-ring and get it ordered so that they can finish the job that they're working on over the weekend, right? So, yeah, our customers don't want relationships with us for the price of an O-ring. Let's have the great conversations with our customers on the important tasks and leave the tasks that can make our customers more productive and our own employees more productive. Let's leave that for our online tools.
Let's leave it for the tools, and let's talk about it a little bit more in great detail. July 30th, please join us for the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers. Register below. We'll see you there. And we are back. Just a reminder, this episode is brought to you by Big Commerce and Data Extreme. Manufacturers are quickly discovering that e-commerce No longer something that's nice to have. It's become mission critical. And especially if you want to stay competitive on a global level. So we assembled a team of e-commerce experts to provide guidance on real-world solutions. So register now to watch the future of B2B e-commerce for manufacturers now on demand. Real simple form. Name and email, just drop it in, watch it, let me know what you think. Be critical, that's fine. Really open to feedback. Really open to feedback. All right, in case you missed it, stories maybe not as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Jeff, what do you have for us this week?
Yeah, starting out with kind of a tough one here, but I picked a story talking about extortion and gang violence are hitting big corporations and business leaders in Mexico. So the story goes on to start with Mexico's largest corporations are being hit by demands from drug cartels and gangs and are increasingly trying to control the sale, distribution, and pricing of certain goods. And they are not picky. They are going for everything from metal to energy, avocados. We've talked about that before. Anything basically that's coming out as a big export from Mexico, the drug cartels are trying to get a part of. And it reached kind of an apex here when the head of the Business Chamber of Federations in the Tamaulipas, sorry if I got that wrong, state across the border from Texas, gave television interviews complaining about drug cartel extortion in that Mexican state. Hours later, he was shot to death outside of his offices.
Oh my God.
So, and this is right across the border from Brownsville, Texas. The article goes in to explain a number of different situations. One is with a convenience store chain with 190 stores. Basically just said, we're shutting down and moving. We're not going to operate in this area anymore because the cartels are pinching everybody for protection money, or they're kidnapping employees, basically asking employees to be drug lookouts. Just a number of horrible things that are happening in these communities. And it doesn't matter the size of the business anymore. They're going after everybody. The reason that this really resonated with me is, outside of it just being horrible, is the fact that we talk about all of this nearshoring that is starting to take place, in particular on the automotive and the food and beverage sides, with a lot of companies wanting to leverage the location of Mexico as well as the lower labor rates. Mm-hmm. Mexico has a great opportunity here. They really do, to expand their infrastructure and grow in a lot of ways. And if they cannot get this crime syndicate situation under control, it's all going to go away. Because while maybe they can't reach GM or Ford or any of those types of companies, that seating manufacturer, that hardware manufacturer that doesn't have that global footprint but is a key supplier to those industries, they are going to be vulnerable. They are going to be susceptible. There's a quote in here that talks about how a lot of these companies are spending upwards of 10 to 12% of their budget just on security. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that?
No.
It's incredible. And when you look at the amount of corruption that is still very prevalent throughout the Mexican law enforcement sector, there's just a lot of problems here. And I'm not going to get into the immigration part of it, but Mexico has a real opportunity again to take advantage of some of these global economic dynamics that are presented to them, but nobody's going to want to go there if they're going to have to deal with this.
No, this is incredible to me how this has seeped into big business, and they haven't been able to shut it down, stop it, slow it down, right, seemingly try to do anything to mitigate it. This week, the American Chamber of Commerce, whose members tend to be larger Mexican, American, or multinational corporations, released the results of a survey of multiple members. Those respondents, 12% said that, quote, organized crime has taken partial control of the sales, distribution, and or pricing of their goods.
Oof.
That is crazy. 12% say that organized crime is eating into sales, distribution, and pricing of their goods. Yeah. That's insane and needs to be stopped. And I mean, to Jeff's point, Anna, we do talk about nearshoring, and when we talk about it, it seems like the inevitability that these companies are going to move to Mexico to try and work around tariffs. But if this is the landscape, I mean, maybe nearshoring doesn't look like that great of an idea or much of a cost savings.
Yeah, or, potentially influential in that choice is, information like this. It says that the cartel violence has long been focused typically on smaller businesses, where it's easier to, it says abduct or approach people or demand extortion payments. But they point to a company called FEMSA, the largest soft drink bottler in Latin America, and listed on the Mexican Stock Exchange, is now being involved. So like maybe big companies, big corporations think we're insulated because of our brand name, and it would be harder to infiltrate our company, but maybe that is changing.
Yeah.
So that's very concerning, of course.
Any and everyone. And the idea of just your employees being abducted for ransom payment is incredible. I mean, half of the 218 companies that were surveyed said that their trucks have suffered attacks. 45% of companies say they have received extortion demands for protection payments. 45%, Jeff, that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make you want to move to Mexico, does it?
No, or do business there. Do you foresee, like, is this problem going to continue? Like, just in terms of like their history of not being able to.
Well, what I don't understand is what is like the turning point
Yeah,
here?
what's the breaking point?
What does it take for Mexico to realize the extent of their issue and sort of clean house on the law enforcement side and get things in place and get this under control? This is going to burn the country down. If you can't grow your economic infrastructure, if you can't get people decent paying jobs and get them away from the control of these types of syndicates, how do you grow? How do you build a society? How do you stop hundreds of thousands of people from fleeing your country every year?
I wonder, are we beyond that point? I don't know. I'd like to be more optimistic, but when you read some of those stats, it is bad.
Well, it's mind blowing. It doesn't look real. It looks like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
But it's very real, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when things turned this bad, they needed a robot cop, and he was able to clean things up.
I think they're ready to try anything right now, man.
All right. Well, sorry for my really cool RoboCop reference there. I apologize. For in case you missed it, I picked a story that I had worked on after a visit to DigiKey. The headline I gave it, the Empire State Building would fit inside DigiKey's massive, highly automated new warehouse. That's because this giant warehouse, which is a 1 million square foot facility and essentially 6 buildings in one, from corner to corner, you could just lay down the Empire State Building in it. And I just thought that provided a real good visual. People want to know how big things are by comparing them to highly recognizable big things and how many times you could fit that into the new big thing. Seems to do really well.
You just got to lay it down.
Just lay it down. So when they unveiled this new 1 million square foot facility in Thief River Falls, Minnesota, about 2.2 million years ago, this has been in the works a long time. They unveiled it about 2 years ago. The warehouse now has 2.2 million usable square feet, making it one of the largest warehouses in North America. The warehouse, like I said, is massive, and it's so advanced that some employees actually said it was like working in the Death Star. But I joke that, like working in the Death Star logistically, not ideologically. And I at first thought it was just like a funny aside. And then you get in there and you see 5 different levels of automation all moving in between one another. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is intense. You get on that 4th level and you're looking down and you're like, I can't believe all of this is happening at the same time. So when I had this chance to actually tour the new facility, it, like I said, blew my mind in terms of it being a true feat of automation engineering. And I mean, really, based on how DigiKey is doing business, it needs to be. DigiKey ships 25,000 orders daily. Previously, these orders were filled by warehouse pickers, and it wasn't uncommon for these pickers to put on 20,000 steps per day. They said they cut it from like 20,000 down to, 1 or whatever it took to get from, the front door to their workstation.
Yeah.
These products actually come to the employees now via an intricate order retrieval system that holds 1.6 million SKUs, which sounds like a lot, sending these components to order assembly stations via 25 miles of conveyors. So I chose the story just because, I was very excited after the trip up there. I was just like, because I feel like describing it doesn't do it justice. And it was just incredible to see it actually working. Yeah. And when you think about DigiKey, you can get however much or whatever you need of any component. So it's like, I need one of these. And, that's how they kind of made their name. Like, they will ship you one of something that you normally had to buy a whole reel of. I thought it was pretty incredible. And they partnered with Canap to bring the company's OSR shuttle Evo technology to Thief River Falls, Minnesota. This is an automated shuttle system, and the largest of its kind from Canap. The company says the system has more than 1,000 automated shuttles. And like I said, while it seems like the 1.6 million SKUs seems like a lot, the capacity for this thing is now 2.7 million in terms of products that they could add to their catalog. And one thing that I liked is that when we toured the facility, it was immaculate. Like incredibly, incredibly clean, but they also have room to grow. So just the nature of how this automation system is built in, they were also a bit forward looking just in terms of, hey, as the business continues to grow, we're not going to just have to keep adding on. We have the space, at least in the interim. And I don't know if you had a chance to check out this story, but it kind of blew my mind with what's going on up in Thief River Falls.
Yeah, and I would say anyone who can, I'd recommend you actually watch the video because there's some footage in there. The bird's eye stuff is like really puts it into perspective because it just is like, whoa, just goes on and on and on. And
it's dizzying.
It almost is. It's like you can imagine that there's all these, hundreds and hundreds of people who work here that would never ever see each other. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
But to that end, stuff like this is cool from the automation perspective, and it's cool from like just the fact that these facilities are so clean and new and refreshed. But also from a workforce standpoint, 20,000 steps a day is a lot, and for people that maybe aren't in their prime or they have some disabilities or they have some issues, you can't do that for very long.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard day that really has an impact on people's lives, their joints, all that stuff. So, to take that out of the equation, that's another one of those ergonomic components that really kind of makes it or breaks it for a lot of employees. People that maybe couldn't do those jobs before can do them now.
Yeah.
And that really opens up your pool in terms of recruiting a workforce for that facility. So it's a smart move anyway,
Mm-hmm. Well, and they do a lot of things internally just in terms of having cafes, bringing in different chefs to do pop-ups at their cafes, and they do a lot for their workers. I mean, they even had a gift shop, which I had, like, we skipped the gift shop. They were like, there's the gift shop, and we went the other way. I'm like, I want to know what's in it.
I need a hat.
Yeah, I need to see the hat selection. But so I thought that they understand the logistics of operating a very large facility in Thief River Falls, which, there's not a lot around there. Like you said, making it easier to open it up to a larger pool of labor, making it a little bit more enticing to work there. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, Jeff, that was really cool was on the tour, we started with the new building, right? And then we slowly walked back through the old building. And it was like walking back in time because it was like, okay, here's all the new stuff. It's incredible how highly automated it is. And, essentially this dance of filling orders, 25,000 orders daily or whatever the crazy number is. But then you walk across the sky bridge into the old facility or the latest edition. There's still quite a few components that aren't maybe as in demand there. Sure. And they had to build conveyors into there to like send them into the new building to be stocked. And, just looking at how the company has grown over the years, I don't know, it was incredible. And just looking at some of the spots in the old building where, these aisles were like maybe shoulder length apart or shoulders width apart. And you're like, that's a long day going up and down those aisles. And I don't know, maybe make it a little easier on the company or the employees.
No, it's crazy. I think I got my first cell phone 2000, 2001, something like that. And when you look at the changes now for what you used to carry around as a cell phone to your smartphone now, just everything it can do, I think it's very similar to the evolution of warehouse automation. It is crazy. Just from the time we started covering this industry and the stuff we saw in warehouses to now, it's remarkable. And I think it's really a testament to this sector of the industry appreciating and understanding the ROI that comes with all this automation, because this is cool to think about, being able to have all of these capabilities. What'd you say, how many miles? 25 miles of conveyors.
Yeah.
That's a lot of investment.
Yeah.
That's a lot of faith in the technology. That's a lot of faith in your business to make those investments. So I think it's great that we spotlight these types of situations because it should inspire a lot of confidence throughout the industry to make these moves. They're scary. Mm-hmm. It's a big outlay of money and resources, but obviously it paid off for DigiKey, and we've seen it pay off for a lot of different folks who sort of made this technological plunge and really reap the benefits.
Well, and as these conveyors are feeding other conveyors, so they're coming one way, they shoot the package onto another conveyor, which can automatically weigh it and then like counterbalance it so that way it doesn't go flying off, and there are different weights every time. So just seeing how that pass is made where one box is thrown onto another conveyor, which kind of spins the opposite direction to hold it, I was just like, that is crazy how that works. And it's going so fast. It's dizzying. When the company was founded in 1972, DigiKey had 2 employees working in a 200 square foot building that they actually shared with another company. In that first year, the entire year, 1972, the company shipped about 10% of the packages that the company ships every day now.
Yeah.
It was just, they have a really cool wall showing the company and its growth over the years. And I don't know, I like when you get the opportunity to really immerse yourself in a company to do a feature piece. And it was very impressive, very impressive. Anna, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
So in honor of the Olympics, I chose a story about the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
So Congress has passed a proposal to require that the federal government only purchase American flags that have been completely manufactured in the U.S. It's a bipartisan bill. They say the change is more than just symbolic. They believe it will support American jobs and manufacturers while preserving the nation's most recognized banner. So this measure was sent to the president. He is expected to sign it. Right now, the federal rules that are in place require the government to buy flags that contain half U.S. made materials. So this rule change, which is called the All-American Flag Act, requires that government purchase flags be produced entirely in America with American-made materials. So just for perspective on this, the article says that in 2017, the U.S. imported some 10 million American flags, and 99.5% of them came from China. Mm. So that's sort of a stunning stat, I would say. Those figures, of course, include all American flags imported, not just those purchased by the federal government. This just obviously applies to the federal government. But, it was an interesting story to me because on the one hand, you're like, well, of course, right?
Yeah.
Of course we should do this. But as an interesting thought exercise, where does it end?
Yeah.
I think one hopes that the government is providing some support for these manufacturers besides just eliminating foreign competition. This is textiles after all. This is a notoriously tough industry in the United States. We have not been able to manage that well here. I think it's hard to disagree that the U.S. should buy American flags made in America, but to me, that logic is symbolic.
Yeah.
Unless it applies to other critical industries that also support American jobs. Yes. I mean, if that's the point of this, is like, well, but,
Yeah.
Then there's so many ways that you could apply that logic, right? So to me, the whole thing was like, it's cool, but at the same time, it's like, okay. I mean, I don't know.
How is it not symbolic?
It's symbolic. It is.
You can't say it's not symbolic. It's completely symbolic.
And I don't hate it. I mean, let's do it, but you can't say that like this is the only product for which this matters.
Yeah, make a bigger difference. Make the little eagle that goes on top of the flagpole. That has to be only made in America. How about the flagpole? I don't know. It seemed like an easy bipartisan political victory, just because, as you noted, like, who's going to vote against that?
Right. You can't vote against that. So it just seems like an easy bill, the All-American Flag Act.
Yeah. Who wants to be the nay on that one?
You don't want to.
But I mean, Jeff, to the point, maybe there should be a list of extremely patriotic products that must be made in the USA.
They have to be.
Yes, and that'll make some real change.
Sure. So I'm not opposed either.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's where I come from.
He's the nay.
So when I was in one of the last stint that I was in the Army Reserve, we switched over from what we used to call like a baseball cap, our soft caps, patrol caps as a part of our everyday uniform to berets. Okay. So everybody got issued these berets. Well, when you looked inside, it had a tag and it was made in, I don't remember which Asian country. It was China, Thailand, Vietnam, something like that. Yeah. So here we have this huge esprit de corps type moment. Like we're going to get rid of everybody wearing different types of covers. Everybody's going to wear a beret. And yet these berets were not even made here in the U.S. We're wearing something on part of our uniform that's not American made. It felt very weird. Yeah. It was very surreal. But when you put it in the context of, hey, you know what? If we can buy these berets for a little bit less, and that means we have, bullets to actually shoot every year when we need to qualify with our M16, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So in this instance, it is 100% symbolic. I think it's a good symbolic. Okay. I don't have any qualms with it. But in terms of how far you go with this, if we start getting to a point where we're showing preferential treatment to U.S. manufacturers over things that, let's be real, the actual product itself is not what we're celebrating. What we're celebrating with the flag is what it represents and the symbolism of that flag, right, not the product. And we get to a point where it's at the detriment of other things that are essential and are very important to have high quality products when we purchase them. That's where we have to start reeling back on this. And that's where it becomes a little bit ridiculous. So and again, where I really struggle with this is we're spending time and energy in our lawmakers' lives and in that whole vacuum of what goes on up there to talk about where we're buying flags from when we've got a lot bigger stuff to be dealing with. So what are we messing with this for?
To look good.
Exactly. So that's where I get frustrated.
A rear win.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's so often the case though, right? Where something comes off the hill and you're just like, that's what you're working on?
Yeah. We spent 5 hours debating and passing this bill. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you share how many manufacturers, U.S. manufacturers of flags are there? Is there like one?
I don't know. That's a good question. If the U.S. imported 10 million American flags in 2017, I feel like that's most of them, right? Yeah. And if 99.5% of those came from China, my guess is they produce them at a more competitive cost than we do here. Again, textiles, that's not an industry that typically flourishes in the U.S. So again, I guess if the federal government is, planning to pay like a hefty, overage on whatever this is going to cost to actually make here, then so be it. But I mean, I think we're all on the same page here. It just like the whole thing was like, okay, I mean, yeah, good, I guess, but also,
yeah, we have a press conference. We have incredible, groundbreaking, bipartisan news over a new law that'll be passed within days. Everyone sits down. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I came here for this. I would have Zoomed for this.
Yeah, and then they're like, there's nothing else that we agree on. I'm sorry. Not a single thing.
Yeah, that is it. All right, well, let's jump into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what is your final thought this week?
So we went camping this weekend. It was super fun, but the mosquitoes, I don't know if you guys got the memo. The mosquitoes are out.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And they are coming for you. Holy
bad.
cow. Like, we were bug spraying like crazy, and then after like day one, my husband was like, our kids look like they are being neglected because they're just like covered in bites. And I'm like, I know, I don't know what else to do. Like, we could just go inside for the rest of the weekend, but that's not fun. Mm-hmm. So we just toughed it out, but everyone got really bit up. And last summer it was so dry that there was like hardly any mosquitoes. And that between just taking a year off from mosquitoes, like I cannot handle them now.
No, it was, we were joking about it on Tuesday. We had it was extremely humid. It was a 9:15 game at the field by the swamp, so it was, everyone got there. Everyone applied the first layer and put the can down. Rail started talking again. Everyone picks up a different can, applies the second layer. Then we all start talking again. And then finally we we grabbed them all at the same time, just started coating each other front and back. And I knew I was finally safe when I had enough on my skin that my skin started radiating heat.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, okay, don't fall asleep in this.
The sweat's not getting out now. It's just you're.
Yeah, no, it was problematic. But I mean, you're right. Like, I wish that there was a more technologically advanced way to kind of mitigate mosquitoes rather than where we're just talking about like, no, we'll just obliterate the entire species.
Yeah.
Like there's gotta be another way. But up until this point, Jeff, like no other way has ever worked.
Yeah. Tuesday night was rough. I could smell it the next day in my car.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and so when we went to do the chant at the end of the game, and I like take this huge breath in, I don't know how many I swallowed, but it was a lot. Where it's just like, oh no.
Oh, gross.
It was so bad. Like the whole ride home, I'm just like, more water. My final thought this week is it was my brother Doug's birthday yesterday, so I just wanted to wish my brother a happy birthday. Remember, I'm older, but not that much older, and we're all old now. And also I was invited to a company party over the weekend, and it was pretty cool. You know, it was at a Brewer game, and the company, you know, our company is the same. We invite retired team members to the company party, and I think that's a really good look. You know, like I like it when sometimes I feel like, especially with the aging workforce and people staying in the workforce longer, once employees retire, they're sometimes discarded. You know, like, hey, thanks for the memories, old timer. We'll see you around. And I just think it goes a long way showing your commitment to your employees, past, present, and future, when it doesn't take much to buy an extra ticket to a game, to buy an extra plate at a lunch, to buy an extra plate at a dinner. I think that goes a long way in terms of employee morale.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if we could also turn it around and like get some of those Gen Zers out there looking at those retired guys, just going like, I'll take it from here, bud. And it's just like, all right, calm down. You don't know what you're doing yet. But I thought it was pretty cool. And I think that it's a good reminder that, you know, your commitment to an employee doesn't have to stop when they no longer are working full time for you, or, you know, at any time. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
No, well said, David. I just wanted to say, you know, one of the things that you give me a hard time about saying on the podcast all the time is blocking and tackling.
I don't give you a hard time.
The basics.
I said, you know, I've bought into it wholly. Yes.
So I just wanted to reinforce that I apply that same thing like at home in everything I do. So I was installing a ceiling fan on Sunday, you know, good indoor activity when it was 90% humidity outside. But it always takes me longer because I'm always nervous with anything electrical. Yeah. So one of the most, you know, producer Eric and I were talking about this. One of the most important things I ever bought was like the test light, like the $2 test light. You just make sure all the wires are not hot before you do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the breaker shut off for everything in this room, and one of the wires was still hot. I'm like, that's really weird. So I'm on like going through, Googling it a little bit, looking at YouTube. And the weirdest part was there was actually people on the internet saying, you know, that hot wire, don't worry about it. Just don't touch it. Don't connect it and it'll be fine. Don't let it touch anything. And yeah, don't worry about it. I'm like, no.
So just leave it dangling?
Yeah, just let it, just do what you're going to do. And which is obviously ridiculous.
Yeah.
And horribly wrong. So finally found out where to shut that wire off before I did anything. Now this added, like going through all the breakers and trying to figure out which one actually shut that wire off, probably added like a half an hour or 45 minutes onto the installation time, which putting up a ceiling fan for me, for whatever reason, is just so frustrating. Like everything getting in there and trying to make everything work when you're 10 feet off the ground is
it sucks. Yeah.
Not fun. But blocking and tackling. Make sure I did not get a weird shock, or make sure that there was not something horrible that happened with getting the ceiling fan installed, which went smoothly. No problems after that.
Well, I mean, I think it's the nature of just you're working over your head for any amount of time, and your arms gas and you get frustrated. But I mean, like as a person who has been electrocuted, I'm never going to fight you on the blocking and tackling when it comes to electricity.
Isn't that crazy? Like that little test light, that has been literally a lifesaver more times than I want to say.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay, so was the live wire supposed to be connected to the fan, or did you just like cap it?
No, it was a live wire. It was definitely important for the operation of the fan, but it was just weird because everything else was off when I shut all the breakers off, but that one.
Okay.
And it just must have been wherever they could grab that from to run it into. It was someplace in the kitchen. I mean, it had to be running 25, 30 feet like to get it there. It was
so that was the power for the fan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I thought you had found the like power for the fan, and then there was just this like rogue stray that was.
Yeah, I don't know if it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the black wire. Like, definitely want to shut that one off.
No, that makes a lot more sense.
But the weird thing was, again, just looking online, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, that little guy.
That's horrible. You could have killed somebody.
No, I mean I had similar when I got electrocuted. And how many people I talked to, they're like, oh, yeah, it's happened to me a number of times. I'm just like, well, after the first one, that was enough for me to be like, you know what? I'm done here.
That's not okay.
Stopped. Yeah.
Learned your lesson.
Yeah. And why do they always make those blades so hard to attach to those fans?
I don't know.
That is just like, you got to weave the screwdriver through there. Anyway.
Like, no,
Now I'm sounding like an old man.
No, I'm a fan of the virtues of a good ceiling fan. But you're right. Like when it comes to also the amount of dust they collect, like how difficult they are to clean, the inevitable like bowl full of bugs that you need to empty out and like shake out like at the end of every month. Yeah, they could work on that a little bit. All right. Did you install like the giant one made out of like deer antlers?
You've met my wife?
Yeah, that would not be approved.
Well, it was the bonus room, you know, just like, well, I figured we'd
No.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. Give us a thumbs up when you're there. It really helps us when we're in the YouTube algorithm. All right. For Jeff Franke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing Podcast, and we will see you next week.